On this episode, we are making a variety of sugar-free licorice candies. Hey, it's Chef Scott
and Janie, and this is WTF, where we help you transform food in your kitchen. So remember, subscribe and stick around for our weekly giveaway. This week we are talking about how to make sugar-free licorice candies, something that's by request that people had wanted for a while. And I'm not a big licorice person, so I know very little about it. Scott, can you just maybe start off with what exactly is a licorice candy?
So I had to do a little bit of research too, because I had never made licorice until we started researching it and wanted to make this episode. But it follows the basis of a gummy bear recipe, and then you add something to it that is completely different. It'll kind of, it blew my mind. It may blow other people's minds, but you add flour to it. So then we wanted to, make it sugar-free, because that's something that people have asked about a lot. So we wanted to make sure that worked, and in that we found some things that don't work. So we want to tell you about those too.
Yeah, and I think when I think about licorice, I'm thinking like black licorice, or I think more famously Twizzlers a lot of times. But what I like about what we're doing today is that we're actually making them in any flavor that anybody would want, which I think is kind of fun. But before we get to that, why don't we talk about what that special ingredient is in licorice that that you found so irreplaceable?
So it's flour, and basically you'll get to the point where it's ready to be poured, and then you add flour, which thickens it up. It gives it the right consistency, and then varying that will change the the density almost of the licorice itself. So we made a pretty chewy gummy here, which is something that people ask about a lot too, is they want their gummies to be chewier. Well, maybe it's not gummies you're looking for, it might be licorice, because these are very chewy and very nice. But the ingredients that we're using are something that we've used a lot, and I think a lot of people will be familiar with, something like gelatin and allulose, which we talk about quite a bit.
Okay, awesome. Why don't we jump right into the demo here?
Yeah, so getting to the demo, because we're going to be able to do the entire thing in a very short amount of time. This is 20 sheets of platinum gelatin. I want it to be as clear as possible. I don't want to add any different hues of color to it, because we want these to be pretty vibrant. And I add the water to it, and I soak it, and it pretty much soaks up all of the water in the recipe. So that's perfect when doing this recipe. So I'm just going to add that directly to my pan. And then I'm going to just gently heat this on low. This is going to be done the entire way. I'm just going to keep it on low because, one, this is a lot of gelatin. I don't want it to scorch or anything to the bottom. I'm adding allulose, which is notorious for, when it's added to proteins, can caramelize really quickly. So once this gets to kind of a liquid state, I can add that. And then also, once I add flour to it, that's going to add another factor. So this is just going to be done low and slow, and once it comes up to pretty much a boil or it starts to bubble, it's done. But it's a really simple recipe. A few other things, we have some flavor drops, and these are something that are going to flavor all of our different types.
All right, now before we get to while this is heating, I know a couple of things we talked about. One was, if someone doesn't want to try allulose, we tried experimenting with a few other sugar substitutes. What did you find when you switched that out for, let's say, something like erythritol or another sweetener? Yeah,
so we wanted to find a good recipe for erythritol, something that people ask about, and maybe we'll find one soon. But I tried to add it to this, and there was a crazy amount of crystallization. So I made it, it looked great, it tasted really nice, but that was when it was hot, and as it cooled, it completely crystallized, and I did it a few times. Maybe I messed it up the first time, and I wasn't able to do it. Allulose is the one that I was found to be able to do it with, and not have any issues with crystallization. So, and allulose tastes the most like table sugar, so why not kind of stick with that?
Yeah, we really love allulose here. We use it in, I think it's become very much the predominantly used sugar substitute in this test kitchen.
Yeah, it works and it's great. So this is fluid. I'm going to kind of show. So at this point, I can add my allulose. Is it allulose or allulose?
I think it depends on your accent. I always say allulose if If someone disagrees, let us know.
No, I don't know. I said it one way, you said it the other way. So I'm just going to gently mix this in.
You got the Massachusetts accent. I have the New York accent. It's a little different.
So once I get this, it will start to dissolve. Allulose loves to clump, so you just kind of smush them down and they'll dissolve in there. But once it starts to get clear, I can then add in my food coloring. So that's just red food coloring. If you prefer a gel food coloring over a liquid, you can do whatever you want, just replace it 1-to-1, that'll be fine. Here I have a little bit of acid that I'm going to add because I'm making a fruit flavor. So that little bit of acid will definitely combat all of this flour. It'll kind of make the flavor kind of punch through. So this is getting nice. And then a little bit of salt just to help bring out those flavors as well. And then our special ingredient, flavor drops.
So flavor drops are just super concentrated flavors, and we use them in pretty much everything in order to just add this like really rich flavor to, especially if you're on some kind of diet where you're like, I don't want this, I don't want that, it doesn't work. It's a great way to add back the flavor without adding in, the whatever it is that you don't want in your recipe.
Yes. So, and the flavors all taste really natural. That's the best part about them. This, when this recipe's done, this has a nice big cherry forward flavor, but we made a bunch of different types. And they all work and they're all delicious. And maybe it's just changing up an acid and it's reflected in the recipe. If you want, something like a lemon, use citric acid. It's going to work for you. Here I used malic acid for the cherries themselves. So once this comes up to just a simmer, then I can add in my flour.
All right.
We're definitely going to be able to see a difference in this.
And I'm sure someone out there is already typing, can I make this keto? And I know you gave it a shot. Do you want to talk a little bit about your findings?
I was really hopeful. I was really hopeful because that would be great. This contains a large amount of flour, as you can see here, so why not be able to switch it out with something? The closest we came was switching it out with konjac gum. And the only issue was the texture. It looked, it felt, it smelled like licorice, tasted like it, but the texture just wasn't the same. It melted in an odd way. It had a very tacky kind of chew. If someone wanted to try it, if they were desperate for it, you could add konjac gum to make something similar, but it's not good enough for us to recommend doing. Yeah,
and unless if you're out there, you're like, but I made it with keto and it's great. Let us know in the comments below what that is. We'd love to try it. So I'm sure, it's not like we've tried every single possible combination under the sun, but if you know of something you recommend us try, let us know.
This is almost up to a boil, and once it does, we'll be able to add in the flour.
Yeah, and I can't help but notice, but that's quite a bit of flour. How much flour is in there?
So for this recipe, it's 150 grams of flour. It's almost a 1-to-1 with the water in the recipe. So it's a good amount of flour. You can lower if you want something softer with less chew, but I find that this is the licorice texture that I like. You can go even more, but I find also the more flour you get in there, all right, this is just about at a boil, so I'm going to lower it down. The more flour you get in there, the more apt you are to get little tiny pockets. So you do your best to try and remove all these pockets of flour, but some of them will break through and you just cut them off. But yeah, the more flour you add, the more that's going to happen. So just be mindful of doing that. This is about the max I can find. And every once in a while you get a few little bits of flour in there, and just do your best to mix them in. So I'm gonna mix in this flour, and at this point it's go time. I cannot stop mixing this. I want to scrape the bottom, because if any of that flour scorches on the bottom, it'll taint the entire flavor of this recipe. And that's not what we want to do.
Yeah, how do you know that the flour is cooked through?
So we're going to bring it pretty much up to a boil. It'll start to bubble. And at that point, I stir it for about a minute, as hard as I can, to make sure that, one, it's not sticking to the bottom, but it's getting evenly heated, so you're not getting like a chalky texture. And at this point, I'm also pressing any of these little lumps against the bottom to try and break them up. If you do a little less flour, you could probably pass this through a sieve and get out all those little bits. But do your best to just press them through and make sure that it's not
Yeah, and while Scott's doing that, you can kind of see over here he made all these different flavors because I said I don't really like cherries or anything else I can try. So I know we have our traditional licorice flavor, the cherry flavor, but then we also made like, what are some of these other flavors that you made?
Lemon, lime, we have a vanilla, we also have a root beer, and then in here we took our root beer and our vanilla and we put them together. So basically I just cut them, hit it with the torch real quick, it'll melt the outside, layer them up in any way that you want, and you can have a nice layered licorice.
It is pretty fun. So I'm going to try this one. So this is the root beer and vanilla, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to give this one a go.
And I use our vanilla beans for that. We also have vanilla flavor drops.
This actually is pretty good. I don't know.
For someone who doesn't like licorice, that's
I've only tasted the cherry before when we were R&Ding, and I was like, it's okay. But this is actually delicious. This is really nice. I think opening it up to all kinds of flavor possibilities makes it really tasty. This is actually quite fun.
Yeah, and you can do, with all the flavors that we have, you can make tons of combinations. Or you can just make some great singular flavors. You can cut them. We tried to braid them to make them fancy. Wasn't able to braid them. But you can do whatever you want to, you know, layer them with just a little bit of torch on them. Not too much because you don't want to burn that flour.
Make like a pina colada.
Yeah, that's
I think, yeah, the possibilities are endless. So.
Getting pretty close.
All right.
You can see how thick this is. And then the gelatin hasn't even hasn't even set. So you're going to get a really thick gummy, but nice and smooth.
All right. So while Scott's in the final stage of the stirring, I guess I'll take this opportunity to talk about this week's giveaway, which will be the ingredients that you see here today in order to make your own licorice. In order to enter to win, I think leave in the comments below another candy recipe that you would like to see us tackle, because we've been doing a fair amount of them and they're actually really fun. You know, they're fun to taste test and kind of play around with, so let us know what you would like to see.
And if you wanted to take this and just make a regular licorice, you could replace the Allulose just with a little bit more sugar, about 25% more sugar, just to give it that sweetness that you're looking for.
Yeah, but I'm personally not missing the sweetness in here. I think I like that it's very flavor forward. I can get the vanilla, I get the root beer. I'm not just getting sugar, which I like. So,
the last thing you do, don't put this into any container that is not oiled. Don't do it. Because it will stick to anything. It's stuck to stainless steel, it's stuck to silicone, it will stick to just about anything.
This reminds me when we made our own chewing gum.
Oh yes. Yeah, this is easier to clean than that, but yes. Put it right into here. I just sprayed it with a little bit of pan spray. That's good for now. But really just let this set for about 12 hours, just until it's completely firm.
Okay.
Slice it up. You can also pat it down so it's nice and flat, but then you can make any shapes that you want out of it.
Does it need to go into the refrigerator?
You should put it in the refrigerator, just covered, just because it's 12 hours. So, but yeah, put it in the refrigerator, and then you'll be good to cut it into any shapes you want.
Okay, great. Hopefully you'll give this recipe a shot. Let us know what your favorite flavors are. So I'm going to try a couple more of these because I was very positively boistered by the last one, by the root beer and vanilla combination. Of course, as always, you can get all the links in the description below. So until next week, from here in the Modernist Pantry Test Kitchen, I'm Janie.
And I'm Scott.